Number 10. Sleaze. Sleaze was originally Darkseid's right-hand man as the new god began accumulating more and more power on the planet Apocalypse. Eventually, Darkseid grew tired of Sleaze's depravity and banished him to Earth using his Omega beams for the very first time. He was stranded on Earth for hundreds of years, making a home for himself in the sewers underneath a slum in Metropolis. Despite not having done much during his many years on Earth, he is actually extremely powerful, being able to dominate the minds of others. He could use these powers to control the governments of Earth or install himself as a ruler, but he refrains from using his powers to their full potential, deciding to instead use them for relatively small-scale crimes. For example, in his first appearance in Action Comics number 592, he uses his mind control power to kidnap Big Barda, forcing her to star in adult films that he sells to a local producer. When Superman shows up to stop him, he manages to bring Superman under his control as well. What does he do with the opportunity most villains could only dream of? Having the Man of Steel himself as a mind-controlled servant? Does he rob banks? Does he make Superman knock down buildings? No. In the next issue, he just tries to make another video starring Superman and Big Barda. Fortunately, Barda's husband, Mr. Miracle, stops his scheme before things get too spicy, but it's lucky Sleaze lacked either the ambition or the imagination to use a mind-controlled Superman to his full potential. Number 9. Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is of course the arch-enemy of Superman, who is both a genius inventor and a ruthless billionaire who moonlights as one of the most dangerous supervillains in the DC universe. Lex doesn't have superpowers in the traditional sense, but he is so intelligent that it is essentially a superpower that has allowed him to come up with everything from his battlesuit to the cure for cancer. Now, if his only goal was to take over the world, he probably could, but he has to hold back on this to a certain extent, as he is also obsessed with maintaining his public image. If Lex were to own the fact that he's a supervillain and just go ham, he could probably be very effective at it, but all of his plans end up taking a lot longer than they have to because he has to make sure that he can't be linked to them and that his reputation stays intact. On the one hand, this is practical, as he certainly doesn't want to end up in prison if he's stopped, but on the other hand, if it weren't for his pathological need to be beloved by humanity, he could save himself a lot of effort. On the other hand, if he chose to put his brain towards good, he probably would be one of the most beloved minds on the planet, but his greed and lust for power prevents him from reaching his full potential on that front as well. Number 8. Black Adam. Teth Adam was a member of the Kandaki tribe in ancient Egypt whose people were forced into servitude by a cruel pharaoh of the time. Most of his family was killed, but Teth Adam was able to escape with his nephew Amun when the wizard Shazam brought them to the Rock of Eternity to make Amun his latest champion. Amun learned that he could share his powers with Adam, and the two returned to free their people. Amun wanted to find a peaceful solution, but Adam felt that peace was not an option and wanted revenge. So he killed Amun in order to gain his power for his own. In the present day of the DC universe, he is the ruler of Kahndaq and sometimes a member of super teams like the Justice Society. He kind of flip-flops between being an anti-hero and a straight-up villain. His enchantment from the wizard Shazam has granted him the strength of Shu, the speed of Horus, the strength of Amun, the wisdom of Zehudi, the power of Aten, and the courage of Mehen. This gives him super strength, speed, flight, and lightning casting abilities that make him capable of taking down most of the heroes of the DC universe with ease. Despite this, he doesn't usually go in on the whole conquest thing and sticks to his home country. This is due to a deal he made with the Justice Society that says that they won't interfere with his rule if he promises not to expand his borders. It's a good thing he mostly sticks to this, as when he did decide to cut loose and start World War III, he was a menace to stop and was responsible for the death of millions of innocent lives. Number 7. The Abomination. Emil Blonsky was a communist spy who was working undercover at the same military base as Bruce Banner, working to sabotage the Gamma experiments so that the US forces would not become more advanced than the communists. When a distraught Bruce Banner tried to take his own life with a Gamma machine in his lab, Blonsky was there spying on the professor. When Bruce's self-harm attempt was interrupted and he was taken away, Blonsky was hit by the Gamma radiation instead. Like Banner, Blonsky had a strange genetic variation that caused the Gamma rays to transform him into a creature, the Abomination, a merciless and murderous monster. Abomination is able to retain his human intelligence and is actually stronger than the Hulk, unless the Hulk reaches a state of total enragement. Unlike Banner, manner, Abomination is thrilled with his new form and regularly goes on rampages, killing entire towns. He considers Hulk his equal, as both are disfigured and alone, but when he learned that Bruce had married his longtime sweetheart Betty Ross, he was enraged at the idea that the Hulk was happier than him, and in a move of sociopathic pettiness, when Betty was hospitalized, Blonsky injected his blood into her dialysis machine, killing her with gamma poisoning. Number 6. Bullseye. Very little is known about the psychopathic assassin simply called Lester, better known as Bullseye. He has told contradictory stories about his childhood, with the only consistency being that he killed his father before using his incredible throwing skills to become a Major League Baseball player. However, he became bored of playing no-hitter games and instead became an operative of the United States NSA, before eventually becoming a freelance assassin. In Bullseye's hands, anything is a weapon, as he is able to throw both weapons and simple everyday objects with lethal and pinpoint accuracy. Despite the fact that he kills for money, he gets great satisfaction from his work and would still be a ruthless killer even if he were doing it for free. He's the evil poster boy for the phrase, "Do something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life." He has come into conflict with Daredevil several times over the years, and never holds back from taking all he can from the Man Without Fear, having fridged 2 of Matt's love interests over the years, Elektra and Karen Page, and having tried to go after others in a deranged desire to get a complete set. Even once he was paralyzed by Daredevil, he continued to try and ruin Matt's life, spending all his time locked in an iron lung, plotting and sending out minions to try and destroy Daredevil. Number 5. Sabretooth. Victor Creed was born in the late 1800s in Canada when his mutation manifested. Like Wolverine, he has a powerful healing factor, an animalistic rage, claws, and heightened senses. His father kept him locked up in the cellar after he accidentally ended his brother's life over a slice of pie. Victor eventually escaped, going on a brutal rampage across Canada before eventually becoming a full-time supervillain, working as an assassin, joining the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Hellfire Club, and becoming leader of the Hand for a time. And that's just to name a few of the teams he's been a member of over his long life. Whereas Wolverine puts a great deal of effort into not giving into his animal instinct, Sabretooth revels in it, taking great joy out of acting on every cruel and murderous thought that crosses his mind. He has joined a few hero teams over the years when it has served his interests, and he sometimes does seem to genuinely care for people, but all that is overshadowed by his desire to cause as much pain and suffering as he can. Number 4. Victor ZSASZ. One of Batman's most twisted and disturbing enemies, Victor ZSASZ was a wealthy man whose parents died in a car accident. This sent him into a depression and he gambled away his family's fortune. He went to jump off a bridge but was stopped by a homeless man who tried to rob him with a knife. ZSASZ killed the homeless man and liked it so much that he decided to spend the rest of his life liberating people from what he considers a pointless existence. For every victim he dispatches, ZSASZ marks himself with a scar, making his body his canvas. And as you can see, he has worked up quite the body count in the years he has been operating in Gotham City. ZSASZ doesn't think of his victims as people, rather as mindless zombies, and he believes that ending their lives is a mercy, so for that reason, he never holds back from earning new marks on his flesh. Number 3. Galactus. Galactus is an incredibly powerful cosmic being who travels the galaxy, consuming energy-rich planets in order to sustain himself. For thousands of years, he did this himself, consuming every planet he came across, until eventually he came to the planet Zenn-La, where he met Norrin Radd. Radd spoke with Galactus and pointed out that traveling the universe searching for planets was using up a lot of the energy that he was getting out of eating the planets. Galactus admitted that this was a less than ideal situation and agreed to spare Norrin's planet if he would become his herald, finding planets on his behalf and then essentially ringing the dinner bell. Norrin became the Silver Surfer and served Galactus for many years. So, while Galactus is capable of using his own powers to find the planets, he holds back and lets his heralds do the task for him, as if he cannot find a planet to consume and runs out of energy, he risks death. Number 2. Ares. Ares is the god of war and frequently tangles with Wonder Woman, being the main villain in her first feature film. In current continuity, he's a lot more chill and actually works with Diana a lot of the time, but we're going off of the new Earth continuity for this one. Ares gains his power from conflict on Earth, often stoking the flames of aggression to get people or countries to go to war. The more intense the war, the more powerful he becomes. However, he is in the difficult position of having to keep people in conflict without letting the conflict conflict reach too much of a boiling point. For example, if he helped start a third world war, that would be really good for him, but if that war escalated to the point where the planet wiped itself out, it would be really bad for him, as there wouldn't be enough conflict to sustain his power. This means that he has to hold back so that he can hit that sweet spot of conflict in the world. Number 1. The Beyonder. The Beyonder is an ancient being from a race known as the Beyonders who exist on a plane of existence beyond the limits of our known universe. When he was accidentally taken to Earth by a group of supervillains using a tachyon beam, he became curious about Earth and decided to stay as an observer to learn more about humanity. He became interested in humans' tendency to be constantly searching for meaning, something foreign to him as he thought he was everything in the universe. When he discovered that this was not the case, he developed an existential crisis of his own and decided to search for meaning by starting the Secret Wars, where he transported the heroes and villains to Battleworld to make them fight. Among his many powers is the ability to manipulate reality, and once took over the entire Earth with a mere thought. He can also erase the memories of everyone on Earth so that they forget meeting him. He could potentially end the planet with a thought, but holds back as he is still trying to learn about both himself and humanity. He has since been made less powerful than he was in his initial appearances, but in his original form, he could easily have been the end of the Marvel Universe if that had been conducive to his goals. Number 10. The Joker. The Joker. How the heck does the Joker hold back? He normally doesn't really. There are plenty of occasions where the Joker lets loose and does whatever he wants, taking lives indiscriminately, but that just makes it all the more incredibly villainous when instead, he restrains his insane sadistic impulses in order to carry out a completely bonkers plan. There are plenty of instances where instead of straight up taking someone's life, the Joker will toy with them, or leave them on their last legs, or completely break down their character, usually for the purpose of manipulating the individual themselves, their close family members, or more often than not, to torment the Batman himself directly. When he completely messed up Barbara Gordon for the purpose of trying to break Commissioner Gordon, or in Death of the Family when he made the entire Bat family believe that he had sliced off their faces when he actually hadn't. Even the whole thing with Jason Todd. He didn't just take down the Robin, he left him on the brink of the afterlife and rigged an explosion just so Batman could almost save him. Yeah, I mean, so far so good, Adam. Hard to say if this is restraint or if it's just his version of comedic timing, but we're off to a good start. Number 9. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mxyzptlk here is probably the best example of someone who is technically a villain and who has no choice but to hold back. If you want to see just how powerful this 5th dimensional imp actually is, all you have to do is read the Emperor Joker story, where his powers are granted to someone who totally shouldn't have them, the Joker. Using this power, Joker eventually causes the end of everything. But Mr. Mxyzptlk? He mainly just uses his abilities to be a pain in the butt and prove that he is smarter than Superman, his favorite superhero. I mean, there's a large case to be made that Mr. Mxyzptlk isn't even a villain at all. The point here is that this imp has the power to completely destroy everything we hold dear, but he knows that, and he has to keep his power in check to make sure that that doesn't happen. He's a villain, but that doesn't mean he isn't responsible. A great choice. What Adam doesn't mention is that Mr. Mxyzptlk is so overpowered that he actually has given himself a weakness to make things more interesting. That being that he will return to his own dimension if you can trick him into saying his name backwards. Kiltipsixum. Number 8. Impossible Man. First appearing in Fantastic Four number 11 all the way back in 1962, Impossible Man is an alien from the planet Papa. The planet Papa is an extremely dangerous place, so its inhabitants evolved to be able to transform into anything their imagination could create. The Fantastic Four first came into contact with the Impossible Man when he went to Earth for a vacation and decided to annoy Marvel's first family. Like Mxyzptlk, he's less concerned with causing harm than he is with having fun at the expense of the heroes, which is good because his transforming abilities have let him go up against several heavy hitters in the Marvel Universe, once knocking the Thing through a wall by transforming his arm into Thor's hammer, and another time getting punched in the face by the Hulk without getting hurt. In one of the most extreme instances of his power, he transformed his entire planet into a duplicate of Earth and tricked Galactus into eating it, causing the Planet Eater to develop a terminal case of indigestion. With power levels like that, it is a good thing he doesn't really go in for planet conquering, because he would be a tough villain to deal with. Not sure if I'd rank him above Mxyzptlk bitch's Spitlick, but they do seem to have a similar deal going on. Number 7. Magneto. When Max Eisenhardt was a young man in Germany, he was subjected to many atrocities at the hands of the Third Reich, who sent him to Auschwitz for no reason other than being Jewish. He eventually escaped and became known as Erich Lenscher. He discovered that he had the ability to control the powers of magnetism, and after the war, used them to track down former German soldiers. He developed the belief that mutants and humanity could not coexist and became Magneto, a mutant dedicated to mutant superiority and the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He is what is known as an Omega-level mutant, being capable of amazing feats such as defeating the Avengers by himself, taking control of the Earth's satellites to hold it hostage, and causing a massive EMP that shut down all technology on Earth. But because his goal is to make the world a better place for mutants, he can't use his full powers, which could destroy the entire planet. In the Ultimate Universe, Magneto reversed Earth's magnetic poles and caused a massive tidal wave that destroyed most of the heroes of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, as well as countless civilians. Let's hope his regular 616 counterpart doesn't feel the need to go down this route anytime soon. Number 6. Brainiac. Brainiac is a complicated villain whose goals change depending on which version of the character you're looking at. Originally, he was an alien whose goal was to kidnap cities so that he could repopulate his home planet, but this was eventually retconned so that he was trying to collect as much knowledge as possible so that he could become the smartest being in the universe. Part of how he achieves this is to go from planet to planet in his skull-shaped ship so that he can steal a city, which he then puts in a bottle for further study before sabotaging that planet's sun so that the planet will be destroyed, making him the sole owner of the information. What I find relevant for this list is that destroying the planet is the easy part for him. What tends to take the most time is getting the city bottled and shrunk. He achieves this with an army of robots and a special shrinking beam, but it does take time, usually enough that Superman is able to stop him. So Brainiac could destroy the planet without getting particularly close and wipe out all of its population, but as he needs a sample to study, he is forced to go through more complicated and elaborate means to accomplish his ultimate goal. Number 5. Orphan Maker. When a mutant named Peter was taken from an orphanage run by Mr. Sinister by a mutant named Nanny, he was fitted with a battle suit that made him impervious to most types of damage. Him and Nanny go about a twisted scheme of saving mutants by taking them from their non-mutant parents, who Peter then takes out, earning himself the nickname Orphan Maker. The battle suit makes him an incredibly powerful foe, but also acts as a power dampener for his as of yet unrevealed powers. However, Nanny has stated that his power is world-ending, and if unleashed would leave no survivors on the planet. So whatever he's holding back, it must be pretty powerful. I honestly couldn't find much info on his potential powers, but if you know something I don't, please let us know in the comments below. Number 4. Lucifer. Lucifer is of course a fallen angel who rules hell. He ruled hell for over 10 billion years, growing tired of the various stereotypes that mortals had come up with about him, claiming that he stirred evil in their hearts and bought and traded souls, all of which were untrue as he simply punished the souls who ended up in his realm. He eventually chose to leave, banishing all the souls and handing the keys over to Sandman and going to Earth to open a bar. He is still evil, I mean he is the devil, and he has an incredible amount of power, being immortal and nigh omnipotent and being able to manipulate reality at will. Something interesting about him though is that he chooses to always keep his word and never lie. This isn't some weird rule that he is forced to follow, he just has a specific code of honor that he chooses to stick to. So even though there have been times where he's been tricked by characters like John Constantine and could just not honor any agreements and kill him, Lucifer chooses to keep his promises. Number 3. Apocalypse. Some of you may not know just how powerful Apocalypse is. His mutant abilities are immortality and control over his molecular structure, which is pretty powerful. But then he was given a power buff when he interacted with a celestial spaceship and gained celestial armor and 2 different techno-organic viruses that turned into a benefit for himself. Now he can essentially grant himself any power that he wants. Superhuman strength, teleportation, telekinesis, flight, telepathy. He can produce force fields, energy blasts, blasts, absorb energy, and even grant power boosts and totally new powers to others. And that is part of the key point here. Apocalypse is famous for his horsemen, who he grants massive power boosts to be his henchmen, but also to enact his true purpose. See, the name of the game with Apocalypse is survival of the fittest, and the evolution of the mutant species. So, while he could completely obliterate the X-Men with his crazy level of power, like he did one time in the animated show, he prefers to send out his horsemen as a test against the X-Men to make sure they are truly powerful enough to carry on. But he's chilled out a bit on that front more recently. Number 2, Battle Beast. Now, some people may come for me, meaning Adam, here saying that Battle Beast is a hero. Some would agree that he is a villain. I'd say, or rather Adam would say, that Battle Beast fights for his own reasons on both sides, as long as it serves his goal. And what is that goal? Literally to pass on to the afterlife in a glorious honor-filled battle. He lives to find his equal and better in combat, so that they can bring the end of his life in an honorable battle. Honor is the key part here. During his fight against Thrag, the unfathomably strong leader of the Voltrumites, he recognizes Thrag's strength and the two go at it. Now, the coalition of the world organized the use of the Ragnars, which are one of the only species of aliens who have proven strong enough to take down the Voltrumites. Battle Beast was told they would be released only if he failed to take down Thrag. So when they were released at the start of the fight and gave Thrag a massive wound, he was actually incredibly ticked off and decided to stop fighting Thrag and instead help him defeat the Ragnars so that they could have a fair fight. Which Thrag even remarks was stupid. But not only did he take away his own advantage, but he even injured himself in the same way Thrag had been injured, just so that he wouldn't have any unfair advantage. It's Sigma as hell, but incredibly foolish. Number 1, the Collector. Tanlier Tavon is an elder of the universe. He existed in the previous universe, and when it came to an end, he was the only one of his race chosen by the cosmic entity Death to be given immortality and survive in the new cosmos. As an elder of the universe, he is almost completely unkillable unless all his molecules are completely eradicated. While he looks like an old man, he has a second form where he gains powerhouse super strength, invulnerability, and cosmic energy manipulation for defense, offensive, and matter manipulation uses. But despite all that power, he time and time again does not use the full force of his power to trap and collect at least one of everything in the universe, including sentient beings. A lot of the time, he doesn't even go off to do these things himself, which he totally could. Instead, he'd rather let others do it. And I mean, when you have literally all the time in the universe at your disposal because you can't be stopped, then yeah, why do anything yourself? No need for urgency. I guess when you consider that the Collector could obliterate most people and only chooses not to so that he can collect them, he's a pretty good choice for the top spot. Number 10, the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a figure from indigenous folklore who was first adapted to Marvel Comics in Incredible Hulk number 162. The curse of the Wendigo is something that happens when a person engages in cannibalism in the Canadian wilderness. The curse causes the person to transform into a vicious creature who has an insatiable hunger for human flesh. In its first comic appearance, the Wendigo was a man named Paul Cartier who went on a hunting trip with his friends Georges Baptiste and Henri Clouzot. When they were attacked by wolves, the trio were forced to hide in a cave where Henri died. After 4 days trapped in the cave with no supplies, Georges wakes up and finds Paul eating his friend's remains, inadvertently giving himself the Wendigo curse. The Wendigo is a mindless creature who never stops being hungry, no matter how many people he eats. So, as a result, he will go all out with all of his attacks and will do anything in its power to get its next meal. There have been several different Wendigo over the years, and they have been difficult foes to defeat for the Hulk, Wolverine, the X-Men, and Alpha Flight due to their strength, their savagery, and their powerful healing factors. Number 9. Doomsday. In the ancient Kryptonian days, a scientist wanted to create the ultimate life form. He accomplished this by sending a baby onto the planet's surface and waiting for either the elements or the creatures on the planet to, well, let's say, help the baby buy the farm. He would then take whatever remains were left and clone the baby to create a stronger cloned baby, effectively forcing evolution to create the most brutal and effective creature possible. After decades of this bizarre process, Doomsday was born. Doomsday is nearly impossible to defeat, being essentially invulnerable and super strong. And if you do manage to hurt him, he has a powerful healing factor that will almost immediately undo the damage. If you manage to kill him, he not only comes back to life, but will be evolved to resist damage from whatever hurt him before. He is an unstoppable force that only gets better at fighting you each time. Like the Wendigo, he is an almost completely mindless creature with no goal other than to destroy all living things around him. When he first came to Earth, he was able to tear through the entire Justice League, with them barely slowing him down, and the only person on Earth capable of standing up to him was Superman. Superman was eventually able to kill Doomsday, but it took him having to not hold back at all, and even then, the effort resulted in both Doomsday and the Man of Steel dying in the process. Because he is so mindless and therefore isn't even aware of the fact that he's not holding back, I've put him and the Wendigo at the bottom of this list. Number 8. Kingpin. After being bullied for his weight as a young child by school bullies, Wilson Fisk decided to become the best at whatever he put his mind to, becoming a bodybuilder and training in various martial arts to become a fearsome and effective fighter. Besides this, he also realized the importance of intelligence, but being from a poor family, had to teach himself using books he would borrow or steal from the library. He was an expert at organizing his fellow criminals, and by the age of 15 was the head of the gang and was known as the Kingpin of crime. His criminal empire grew as he worked his way up the ranks of organized crime in New York, eventually being in control of the entire criminal operation as well as several legitimate businesses. In order to maintain his control, he is willing to cause the deaths of countless men, women, and children, once even unleashing a helicopter attack and using a crazed super soldier known as Nuke to attack the people of Hell's Kitchen just to try and draw out Daredevil. The closest thing Fisk has shown to mercy in a long time was when he agreed to take care of a man's daughter before killing him. The daughter grew up to be Echo, who later shot Fisk in the head, so there's karma at work for you, I guess. Number 7. Molecule Man. Owen Reese was an ordinary lab technician who was repairing an atomic device and was caught in an accident that granted him incredible powers. This was actually a part of a plan by the Beyonders to end the universe, but for simplicity's sake, we're just gonna stick with the basics. He was granted the ability to control matter and energy, but due to a lack of confidence, was unaware of the true extent of his power. He originally thought that he had to be using a metal wand to manipulate matter, and also was under the impression that he could only control inorganic matter, but both were actually untrue. He was actually so powerful that the Watcher captured him, believing that he was too dangerous and could potentially destroy the universe. He eventually came back to Earth by reconstructing his body, and for a time was one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, once Dr. Doom helped him realize his true potential. He went toe-to-toe with the Beyonder and helped save the universe in Secret Wars 2. He became less outright villainous as the years went on, with him struggling to overcome madness and be a better person, but at the height of his villainy, it's a good thing that he was unconsciously holding himself back, as he was capable of ending universes with a thought if he wanted to. I wasn't very familiar with Molecule Man, but if all this is true, he feels a bit low on this list. Number 6. Loki. Loki is a god. As such, they have an Asgardian frost giant physiology, which makes them much more powerful than other beings. Loki's also incredibly adept with sorcery, being able to use it to do a whole wide array of different things and grant himself a whole whack of powers. He became the Sorcerer Supreme at one point. Whether it was by his own skill or a trick doesn't matter, he still did it. He's taken on the OG Avengers when they first formed and is just an incredibly powerful guy. But kind of like the Joker, Loki's a planner. His whole thing is tricking people and laying long convoluted plans to give pretty much everyone a bad time. Which means instead of just totally destroying people, which he could do, he toys with people, leads them on, pretends to be their friend, and adds just a whole bunch of not so necessary extra steps into his plans, all for his own entertainment. On a personal note, I recently read the X-Men Alpha Flight crossover from 1985, where Loki grants the humans and the mutants the power to make the world a utopia. He takes away this power and attacks them when the heroes refuse it, but it does prove that Loki could fix all of Earth's problems by himself if he wanted to. He just chooses not to. Number 5. Thanos. This one is pretty simple. Thanos on his own is incredibly powerful, able to be a threat for the Avengers any day of the week. But during his most famous story, where he assembles the Infinity Gems into the Infinity Gauntlet to grant himself the power to do essentially anything, his main goal was to destroy half the life in the universe to impress his girlfriend, Death. He could have done almost anything, and instead of really fully committing, he chose to only bring down half the universe. Half? No man, if you wanted to impress that girl, you gotta give 100%. Thanos did a half measure. What kind of villain does that? Lame. Moving on. So the reason Thanos didn't wipe out all life is because if he did, death would have become redundant and have no purpose. But Adam is absolutely right. Thanos held back a lot by not killing every living being in the universe. Number 4. Doctor Doom. I don't know if I'd say Doctor Doom holds back his power. I think a better explanation would be that he chooses his time to strike. And personally, or rather Adam, thinks that this is because he just wants to use the least amount of effort possible when he engages in battle. Now, this is obviously not always true. We've seen Doom completely obliterate his opponents on multiple occasions, and he has become the most powerful person in the universe on multiple occasions, using that massive power to do whatever the heck he wants. But let's think about all the times that Doom doesn't actually have to use his power. How many times have we seen Doom just sit on his throne without having to do anything because people know better than to cross him? So many times. His power speaks for itself, and so he doesn't really have to use all of it. Simple as that. But okay, let's think of an example. When his master, the Marquis of Death, came and judged him, Doom got sent all the way back to be swallowed by a megalodon. He had his heart turned to stone and his blood into acid, and not only did he survive, he managed to make his way back to the Marquis of Death, and instead of just taking him out immediately, Doom disguised himself and pretended to be the Marquis' apprentice, just waiting for the moment when he could waltz up and completely slap the guy. Which he did after the Fantastic Four had brought the Marquis down a few levels. I mean, I can't argue that. Plus, think of all the times he delegated with his Doom bots. Number 3. Carnage. Cletus Cassidy was a troubled young boy who took out his homicidal urges on his grandmother, his family dog, his school bullies, just anyone. By the time he was a grown-up, he had become a notorious serial murderer known for eating his victims. He adopted a personal philosophy that even the average person can commit murder if only he has the courage. If this was the end of his story, he'd be just as deserving of a slot as ZSASZ, but it is actually just the beginning. Cletus was eventually caught and sent to Rikers Island to serve 11 consecutive life sentences, where he was made the cellmate of Eddie Brock, aka Venom. The two did not get along, but when the Venom symbiote arrived at the prison to rescue Brock, it left behind a spawn. The new symbiote entered Cletus's bloodstream through a cut and bonded with him, transforming him into the deadly Carnage. Carnage is even more powerful than Spider-Man and Venom combined, and as if that weren't bad enough, he still has Cletus's twisted life philosophy, which he tries to enact any chance he gets. He is a brutal and cruel killer who never holds back from ending another victim's life. Number 2. DARKSEID. A lot of you were wondering where DARKSEID was on our villains who hold back list, saying we had forgotten him. On the contrary, we just think that DARKSEID is one of the most brutal and merciless characters in comics, and that he deserved to be saved for a list of villains who don't bother with mercy or holding back at all. After the old gods died in a battle against evil, the planets New Genesis and Apocalypse were born. The latter fell under the control of an evil and tyrannical new god called DARKSEID. New Genesis housed the source of all life, the life equation, and DARKSEID became obsessed with finding its opposite force, the anti-life equation. He discovered that the anti-life equation was on the planet Earth and began a campaign to conquer the planet, bringing him into constant conflict with the members of the Justice League, particularly Superman. He is all but immortal, invulnerable, and super strong, and as if that weren't bad enough, he is an incredible tactician with a keen scientific mind who has telepathic powers and the ability to shoot omega beams from his eyes, which he can use to either destroy or teleport his victims, such as when he sent Batman back to cavemen times at the end of Final Crisis, essentially turning the Dark Knight into a temporal bomb. Even Superman has trouble going toe-to-toe with this new god, whose only weakness is a substance called radium. Number 1. The Batman Who Laughs. When the Joker of Earth 22 found out he was dying, he decided to go on one last spree in an attempt to send Batman over the edge. He killed all of the other supervillains in Gotham as well as Jim Gordon. He blew up several buildings and captured Batman. He forced the Dark Knight to watch as he killed the parents of kidnapped children in front of them before infecting them with Joker toxin in order to stop the madness, Batman broke free and broke the Clown Prince's neck. When he did this, Batman was inadvertently exposed to a Joker toxin, which corrupted his mind and gave him Joker's sick and twisted sense of humor and his murderous desires. This multiversal villain has all the cunning and skills of the Dark Knight mixed with all the cruelty of the Joker. This Batman went on to kill the Bat family as well as the entire Justice League before using his evil cunning to take over and destroy his world. He was then recruited to lead the group of evil Batmen in the evil cosmic being Barbados' plan to destroy the multiverse, but was defeated when the main universe's Batman did the one thing the Batman Who Laughs could not predict and teamed up with the Joker to save the universe. He has stuck around since then, continuing to show how horrifying an evil Batman who never holds back really is.